Craig, for those who haven't come across you online yet, tell our listeners your name and tell them why we're talking.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. My name is Craig Douglas. I'm one of the founders of Statim Rx. Statim Rx really, there's really two pieces to the business. One is a provider-focused PBM, so driving solutions, managed care solutions to the outside entities, but doing it from a provider-focused lens, so a pharmacy lens. And then the other component is really healthcare logistics and, being able to help pharmacies compete in a space that now everybody expects everything on demand, right? And so we've created a solution to help pharmacies compete in that space.
On your website, you described yourself as a pharmacy brat. What does that mean? I'm imagining you're a youngster, you're in the pharmacy of your parents and so on.
It's interesting, and you owning independent pharmacies and knowing what it means, it's a all hands on board business, right? It takes a family to run it or a family to mess it up one way or another. And, when other kids would be done with soccer practice, they would go home. We would go to the pharmacy, right? And there was always one more thing to do and one more item to check off the list. And for me, back in the old days, it was I was putting the drug order away, right? Because nobody could get to it during the day because it was so busy. And so now you got this tote full of meds, you got to get it put away. And I'd have to try to, remember my dad used to categorize things brand, and then he'd put the generic next to it. So I'd have to know what the darn generic was. It was just, it was so convoluted and difficult for a kid. And all I really wanted to do was go home and maybe watch some cartoons and grab a bite to eat. But that was the business we were in, right? And so you'd spend a lot of hours there and you chipped in wherever you could, whether that was doing deliveries. And then sometimes you were just that kid in the way, right? And I learned to do Papa Wheelies on wheelchairs, and because I just burning time, and
did you work through high school at your dad's?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it was always in fits and starts, right? Depending on how much, sports were going on and what my activities were, but for sure during the summers, there was just no escaping it. In most cases, you were there. So even if you weren't technically working, you may be there just so they keep an eye on you if you didn't have baseball or something else to be doing, right?
My problem back then is, my dad would do the schedule and he always knew where I was basically. So you couldn't just put on there, like nowadays I'll tell my team, I'm like, if we have enough people on the payroll, if I have enough employees, if I've done my job right, and if I know about how many hours a week you want to work, I don't care if Monday morning is your crying morning and you want to stay home in bed and do that. Or, Wednesday you like to watch TV at night or something. And so I'm like, just use this computer program we have and we'll work it out. But back then it's like my dad always knew where I was. So you couldn't just say like, I want to take Friday night off. It's like, well, what are you doing? Is it, there's got to be a football game or something to do that. So I don't know. I always kind of felt, and it was job security, I guess, but it was a pretty tight rein. Not that he needed that tight rein for my growth, but that I think it was good for him to know where I was if there was a pinch at the pharmacy. Yeah, I didn't like it all the time,
No, but it's they're family run businesses, right? It's the same thing with your family. It's like the pharmacy was just an extension of the family, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but it worked. It provided for us. It provided the opportunities. It opened up lots of doors. And so, I tell you, my time in the pharmacy and growing up in that space, it really defined me as an individual and how I think about businesses and how I think about relationships going forward. So, I got a lot of probably bad memories as we were saying, but so many good positive ones as well.
Yeah. Did your mom work in the store?
She did. Until I think, it got to the point where just didn't make sense anymore.
Because of their relationship or because financially?
Nope. It's the first one. And so it just made sense. She got into real estate and, thank God to have some diversification in the family was, a good thing,
Right.
So it worked out great. But I remember the early days when it was like literally the whole family, right? Including my mom. And that's tough.
And you probably talked about it all the time, right?
Oh, yeah. Going home and dinner and dad wants to talk about PBMs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my dad too. It would be like, and even after I was married, and I was still working at the pharmacy, you'd come over and you'd be sitting there on a Sunday or something, and he'd just start, talking about something, and
It's always pharmacy related in some.
it was always pharmacy.
To this day, he's in retirement, and still, those are the conversations we're having. It's just so in his DNA.
And it's comfortable. There's always a topic to talk about.
Years and years and years, and that's all you know, right? And you always get nuggets of information, though. Always nuggets of knowledge, which is super powerful.
Did you guys have one store?
I would say he expanded and contracted over the years, right? Which is, it's the nature of the business, right? I think there was, times where you could go. We were in the Willamette Valley, which is kind of wine country out in Oregon, and you'd see an opportunity in an adjacent city, and you go after it, and but the challenge I think you have in independent pharmacy, and definitely had at the time, is you're trying to do both, right? You're trying to be a pharmacist, trying to be on the counter, build those relationships, but you also got to be running the business. And it was always a tough balance. And so, he would expand into markets, and then sometimes it'd be like, oh gosh, maybe overextended himself, right? And I think that's the tough part about that particular industry is, they teach you how to be a pharmacist, right? They don't necessarily teach you how to be a businessman. And so it can catch up with you. As you know, pharmacy is it's not a hobby. It'll catch up with you really quick. And so he had some opportunities. He expanded. By the end, he contracted to his original pharmacy, and he just rebuilt it out. He built like kind of his dream pharmacy, and that was kind of his retirement plan. And it worked out well.
Did you have siblings in the business?
Yeah, I think most of us all were in some form or fashion over the years, but there was three siblings and myself. And, again, you couldn't escape it, but we were all spaced, 3 or 4 years apart. And so they always had somebody to, do some grunt work around the pharmacy.
Did any of your siblings end up in the profession at all?
No, not from a professional standpoint. One of my sisters did spend some time working in the pharmacy, helping my dad from the business standpoint, until he decided to close up his last shop. But me and another sister of mine are both been in the pharmacy space for years. Actually, right out of college, basically, we've been in some sort of pharmacy space.
We had 12 kids in our family, and I think that the other ones didn't go into it. They all liked my dad, but it was easier to hang out with my dad at home than to be with him at the pharmacy. I don't think anybody could really understand, because they always saw my dad as joking around and happy, but there's a pressure that you can just see in their eyes as saying, we want this right. And that pressure, I think, transferred over, positive and negative, to the kids. But I think that none of my siblings went into it because they knew that my dad wasn't probably close to retirement. I went into it knowing that when I graduated, I was probably going to be a few years or something before he would have been done.
It's interesting. I think from my standpoint, I can't speak to all the kids, but I think one thing we saw in our early days is he was a community pharmacist, right? And he was a part of the community. And that was his passion. Not necessarily pharmacy. It was helping people, right? That was what he loved. And you could see it. People came, Mike, how are you doing? How are things? Like, he just great rapport with the community. But by the end, as you know, he started being tested on, how fast can he operate? How accurate can he be? What are his financials? And it just became less about chasing down, payments and reimbursements and, all the other nuances. And it became less about being a community pharmacist and more about just business first. So you always got this undercurrent from him of not being happy, loving the profession, loving pharmacy, but not being happy about the transition from being a community to a major business. And
precisely.
So that scared a lot of us away.
When were his last productive years of actually being in the pharmacy and working and things like that?
Yeah, early 2000s, right? So you started seeing, integrations of payers, and the model started changing quite a bit. And a lot of people, I'd say a lot of pharmacies got caught flat-footed, right? And rightfully so. He didn't need to have the energy to put into it at that point, and he didn't have somebody to step in and really do it. And I think that was probably the only regret, is having somebody, a child of his or somebody who could step in and start to do those types of things probably would have been meaningful, or finding somebody he could bring in as an associate, right, and train them up and possibly sell it to them. I think that's probably the only piece that he probably wasn't super happy about, right, at the end of the day. And I get it. Everybody wants to leave a legacy.
At one point, did your dad know that you were not going to be part of that legacy, because that wasn't your direction?
Oh, I think it was pretty obvious by my grades coming in from high school that I was not going to be a part. Right? So, I mean, we all have to own it at some point. I mean, it is what it is. And as you know, pharmacy got more and more and more competitive. And, when you're not a straight A student and not very close, you don't have much of a chance. And I would say I'm probably more built like my dad. I'm kind of the guy that is, I want to be that community guy. I want to be engaged. I want to build relationships. I want to do all those things, right? So it probably wasn't a good fit for me anyways. I think both me and one of my other sisters, I think there's a little bit of, she had a much better chance of being a pharmacist than me, but there's a little bit regret because you kind of want to carry that on, right? And I see it today. My wife's a dentist, and it's a beautiful profession. And, there's always talk about our two little ones. Would one of them be dentists? I don't know. It sounds like a really good story. I think it's something you'd like to see, but I just don't know that that's, I think it's rare nowadays. I think it's hard to have that. You see it a lot more in dentistry. You see a lot of second, third generation practices for sure. A little bit tougher in pharmacy nowadays.
If it wasn't for me, none of my siblings were even close to it, and it would have just done, it would have just been sold or whatever.
Yeah.
So you get into college. Was pharmacy the furthest thing from your mind? Were you like, I'm going to go out and do this, and you thought the pharmacy will just go its way? You didn't expect to be in the profession?
No, had no thoughts about it, honestly. I, except for just, I think we all kind of felt like it'd be nice to leave a little legacy for our father. But no, I mean, as most, people, when they go to college, they go out there, and, I went to college and graduated and thought I was pretty smart. And I knew a lot of people, and I was well on my way. And then I realized I wasn't that smart, didn't know a lot of people. And you end up knocking on your dad's door saying, hey, do you know anybody who can find me a job? and that was the reality, right? That's kind of how it all started, because when you go into the profession of pharmacy, you're going to be a pharmacist, right? And there's lots of different avenues you can go, but you know who you are. You know what you are, right? I was a business degree major. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know which direction I was going to go. I could have gone to advertising. I could have gone, who knows, finance. I mean, a million different directions. And so.
Yeah, that's the thing with pharmacy is sometimes it's even I guess everybody would wish they could have this problem right now, but, golden handcuffs. But I mean, you almost feel guilty doing something else. But with business, you don't really have that, good and bad. You don't have that solid direction. In the long run, it might be good. In the short run, though, you don't know your next step necessarily.
It's eye-opening in the short term, right? Because you're looking for some help. You got to get started somewhere.
What did you picture in early college? Did you have thoughts of what areas that you would take a business degree?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of assumed I'd go the healthcare route, and mostly just because of the connective tissue to, pharmacy and relationships there. I figured that would probably be the path. My oldest sister had gone that route, and so I could kind of see a bit of a roadmap in terms of my future. But, that's easier said than done. You got to get some doors opened, and but I always kind of assumed I would head down that direction.
Did you think it would be anything, and I say this with all respect, you think it would be anything as small as attaching to your dad's pharmacy, or was this going to be bigger, like running, one of the big drug manufacturers or something like that?
No, I never saw my career as being something that was, connected really to, the pharmacy and the pharmacy background. I saw it as I would be doing something a little bit more nationally, more globally. I had always felt that way. Yeah.
So you get out of school, though. Is it fair to say those jobs weren't there, or do you think something was tugging you back to something, let's say, more personable or meaningful?
Well, I think it's tough to get into healthcare jobs with just a standard business degree, and you got to get started somewhere. And that's really what took me to really, frankly, I got done with school. I was just focused on getting done with school, and I didn't really have a super good plan, right? And I started asking my dad if he had some connections and some relationships. He introduced me to a company at the time. It was called Bergen Brunswig, which is obviously now called Amerisource Bergen, and that's where I got my start, right? So I was lucky enough to at least get an introduction, get my resume out there, and certainly I had a ton of pharmacy experience because I'd literally grown up in pharmacy. So that helped me tremendously to kind of bridge that gap to get started somewhere. And then I spent 5 years at Amerisource Bergen, and it was a really incredible experience, right? Because you got to learn firsthand that it's all about relationships in this pharmacy space. And somebody could be walking in, another rep from a competing company could be walking in right behind you, and they could have 25 basis points better deal. But you're hoping they're going to do business with me because I've been there. I've shown up every Friday and had conversations, gave them updates, legislative updates, brought them materials, followed up on issues, questions. And that's really where I kind of learned my way. It was an incredible experience.
Were you what they would, maybe this is derogatory, were you a sales rep for them?
Yep, exactly, 100%.
Is there a better word for that now?
I mean, it is what we did, right?
Everybody wants to change everything.
Yeah, I don't think we need to change it. I think it is, we were sales reps, and I had accounts in rural Oregon that if I showed up wearing a suit, they would throw me out. Don't you dare to ever show up because it looks like you're trying to sell me something. And then you had others where that was the expectation that you had that professional attire. But yeah, no, I was in early days. So I started in retail. I spent 3 years in retail doing independent pharmacy. It's great. It was great. It was fantastic. We lost a lot of pharmacies though. So it started changing and evolving. And their opportunity came up to do something in alternate site. So alternate site would have been long-term care, home infusion, specialty, anything that was outside of acute and retail. And so I spent my next 2 years there. And that's really what kind of started my career.
With Amerisource?
With Amerisource, yep.
Was it all soft sell with Amerisource, like our reps, they'd kind of come in and shoot the breeze for a bit? Did you have to do any like cold calling or like hard sales or anything like that?
Yeah, contract negotiations, hard sales, trying to save an account, trying to close an account. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we were too good of an account all those years. Well, nobody had to push too hard. Back before 1995, nobody had to push too hard. There was money in the business and everybody was pretty chummy with each other. The competition didn't really need to be there. But as those years came around, certainly there was a lot more of the buying groups and the different things happening where I can see that it would not have been your father's wholesaler, as they would say.
No, you're absolutely right. The 2000s created a lot of pressure in terms of cost of goods and all those different relationships, all those different pieces really started becoming to forefront. We also had the Pacific Northwest was kind of a nice little story up here. We also had more competition come into the space too, and competition created more aggressive pricing, more different stories, different programs, and so it really did change when I started there, and I'm thankful for it.
What competition came in?
At the time, it was, when I started, it was Bentley Western.
Okay, just another wholesaler.
Yeah, I got acquired by Cardinal, right? Everybody gets acquired.
So you were in the retail spot, let's say, for a few years. What was the impetus to say, I'm going to go to the non-traditional areas? Was that something that you approached them or they approached you or what?
I saw an opportunity and I applied for it. I would say it's twofold. It's personal growth and professional growth, right? It was a space that I wasn't familiar with. I was very familiar walking into, a drugstore. Like I was very confident in that. We're talking about institutional closed door pharmacies have a totally different view on things. They use, much different solutions and like, for example, GPOs, right? And that was kind of my first introduction to group purchasing organizations and how I transitioned to the main part of my career.
Were you going to make more money in your other one, or was your job on the rocks with retail, or were you just like, I want to change?
It's more responsibility and this kind of notion of change, right?
You were sick of the other one?
Well, it was more, I'd been around it. I mean, it's kind of going back to the story of why I didn't go into pharmacy, right? I'd been around independent retail pharmacy for years and years, and I loved it. Part of it too is getting some separation. Everybody knew who my dad was. It was a small community. It's like I gotta kind of go prove things on my own and, go about it a little bit differently. That was a big piece of it, right?
I can see that. Was there anything memorable of you saying, I need to do this on my own? Or was it just a feeling over time just to kind of separate yourself from being the son of your dad instead of being your own person? Was there anything that pushed that, or was that just kind of a gradual feeling?
No. I mean, you always want to earn your way and earn your keep and have your own name, right? I think fundamentally it's what drives us and your competitive spirit. So, no, it was definitely something that it was a new challenge, but also it was getting out from kind of underneath, like, you're Mike Douglas's son, right?
Right.
And that's not that I'm super proud to be his son, but it's also, I want to go prove myself, right?
You were there for 3 years. How long then do you end up in the other side of things at Amerisource?
So I did alternate site for 2 years, had a lot of success, and I was working with a large post-acute GPO. And I worked very closely with those folks, and we had a lot of mutual success. So driving savings for pharmacies, helping these long-term care pharmacies be as successful as they possibly can. Their CEO had got kind of wind of me and some of my reputation, some of my experience out in the Pacific Northwest. He was actually doing a kind of a turnaround of this company, and he was building out his team. And they approached me to be a national account manager out on the West Coast. So it was now a bigger territory. I was covering Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho, Alaska, Montana. And it was interesting because it was a really small company at the time. They had like 97 employees, Mike. And then, I'm going from a Fortune 25 company to a kind of a turnaround, almost a startup of sorts. But the CEO had just such a great vision and where he was going to take it. I thought, you know what, I'm young. I might as well go shoot my shot right now. And I left and went to post-acute GPO, and I had a lot of success there. So I was a national account manager on the West region, became the director of sales, became the vice president. Eventually, the company sold to a public company, and I was the executive vice president or senior vice president for the long-term care division for like 4 years. And I had responsibility for the GPO, the payer network, so the PSAO, the revenue cycle management software, and the clinical software. And so I got just a great experience. Loved it. I loved most everybody I worked with there. It was a really good thing. And what we did was we really just drove, value back to the pharmacies. And we tried to identify opportunities where we could drive value back to the pharmacy. So it was very rewarding, very fulfilling.
You were 2 years in the alternative program at Amerisource. I don't like that term, alternative program. It makes you sound like you were a delinquent, like they caught you smoking or something.
Well, it's the Pacific Northwest. It was, the home of alternative rock, so it fits.
You were right with Nirvana.
Oh, Nirvana. Yeah, sure. Yep, they were just up north, yeah, Seattle.
Let's say that GPO wasn't there. Let's say you didn't know these guys. How long do you think you would have stayed at Amerisource? Was that a good job those last 2 years, or would you be looking to do something else at that time?
Oh, I loved it. There was nothing. I mean, you're always looking. I mean, there's always other opportunities, but I had nothing but great respect for the people I worked with, and still friends with a number of them. Enjoyed the company, enjoyed the culture. And so, you never know, really. I wasn't chasing down any new jobs. Honestly, they kind of came to me.
Right. All right. So, Craig, you're with this group purchasing for how many years then?
13 years. So it was about 4 years ago that I left.
What precipitated that then?
Companies change and evolve. Cultures change. It was still a great company, but, people had moved on. People that you kind of grown up with in the company have kind of moved on. And that was one component. Like everything has a shelf life, right? The other thing is it was a grind on me. Traveling from Portland, Oregon to New Jersey is that's a 6-hour affair, right? Just if you're lucky.
Have you traveled at all during COVID?
No, but I have had partners that have traveled. I'm in a kind of I'm in a weird part of the world, so it's not as easy for me to get around. But we've had instances where we had meetings set up, and then it's just like, Atlanta gets shut down and they're down into, level 1 again. And so you're going to travel there and you can't really do anything. And we're level one, we can't do anything here. We've had to abandon some ideas of travel, just because it's not set up for it right now. But and the other thing is we are in the healthcare space, and they got a lot of stuff going on, right? Senior care space right now, they're trying to figure out how to roll out a vaccine and everything else. And so, they don't necessarily need me wandering around the halls. So,
yeah, that's right. Do you think travel is kind of like, I'm proving to you, my customer, that you're worth me hopping on the plane and coming all the way down here? Is that part of travel too?
I think so, but I'm sure some people see it that way, but I don't see it that way. I see it more as there's a relationship there in most cases, or there's a relationship you want to build in most cases, and it's a lot easier to do it in person and to really have dynamic conversations that can go above and beyond just a simple topic, right? And so I think maybe you're proving it a little bit to that client, but I just think there's an expectation is it's how you build relationships, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. And some people right now might say, well, we don't need it. This is going fine. It's like, yeah, but wait for 5 years. You're not going to build new relationships.
Yeah.
These are going to break down. The person that is visiting is going to build a relationship unbeknownst to you who are on the video camera, thousands of miles away.
I totally agree.
I'm imagining that you say, all right, things have changed here at the GPO. And I think it's time for you then to say, one, I can move on to something that maybe fits myself better, my vision of who I want to be, what I'm doing. But also I imagine this goes off into an area of saying there's some problems out there that I can solve with my great background. Mm-hmm. Would that be fair to say that was a launching pad then of leaving the GPO? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think things change, and you obviously know that you've got a big network of people that and if you can find the right solutions, you can build out some good solutions in healthcare. And I think myself and my partners have always had a lot of confidence in that. There was early days where you're not so sure how it's all going to play out, but you make it happen, right? You make it work. And so we've been able to stand up a couple companies, and one pretty excited to kind of talk to you about was Statim, and just what we've been able to do at Statim Rx and how that's kind of helping the industry.
After you left the GPO, how long was it before you formed Statim? Was that your first company you formed?
No, it was our second.
What was the first one?
Well, it's a formulary management company. It's called LithiRx. And so it's a very niche business, very focused on long-term care pharmacy. So its landscape, it's a really nice little company, but its landscape it's really small. You have to have a fair amount of Part A patients, and really just patients coming out of a nursing home into a short stay within a nursing home, or out of a hospital into a short stay within a nursing home. So it's not as broadly known, but that was the one that we stood up initially. Then we brought in, one of my buddies who I'd worked with in the past as well, was looking for a change. His name's John DiFiore. He came out, and we had this idea of Statim Rx and what we were going to do there.
All right, devil's advocate, Craig. Ready for this one?
Yeah.
Partners suck. Don't ever get a partner. Why would you want a partner? Tell me why that statement wouldn't be fair to say to you and your partners.
Well, I would say partners are hard, right?
Hard.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're realistic, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I have a number of partners that have strengths that I don't have, and vice versa. And it's also helped us scale across the country in a way that I couldn't have done on my own. And so I think it's really important. And look, partners, it's about relationships. It's, there's good days and bad days, right? But I had already worked with most of these partners in a prior life, so we kind of knew we knew each other really well, right? And we felt pretty confident in that. It doesn't mean there still isn't roller coasters. There absolutely is, but man, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and it's not. But I would rather be a part of a partnership with some folks that know how to go to war with you than own 100% of something that's not that impactful in the marketplace, right? So I would trade that off all day long.
You would.
Yep.
Back on the devil's side, somebody says, well, Craig, I'm going to give you $1 million to set this up. And your answer to that is, no, I still want these guys or gals with me. But I'm saying, yeah, but Craig, the money's there. And you're saying, no, Mike, I still want it this way. Why? What can these guys do that fictitiously, if the money was there, that you could not buy?
It's to your point, partners suck, right? I think is what you said. Owners suck too. So, working for money, working for a financial institution, that's no walk in the park either. And so it's just a balance.
You mean people working for you might say it sucks and they're gone then?
And my livelihood, so I go take some money from a financial group. They own me now. They can fire me and move me out as quickly as they would like.
Back on the devil's side,
Yep.
Let's say it was your money. You don't owe anybody the money. It's your money. You don't have to pay it back. Nobody owns you. You can take that X million dollars and set up your management team and so on with this money. Take the money out of it. Let's say money's not an issue. You'd still rather say, no, Mike, I don't care what money could buy for this. I'd rather be in the relationship of partners with these 5 guys instead of me being their boss. Is that true?
Yeah, I think you get a lot more done when everybody has skin in the game, right? And even if I controlled everything, I wouldn't have the relationships that some of them have. And so it allows you to move a lot faster than you would otherwise, right?
You wouldn't have the relationship that they have with people.
Certain clients, right? And this is a relationship business. So, Statim's a great example of that. It's only 2 years old and people, they know who we are and there's a lot happening there, but I'd say that's a byproduct of the people that are behind the business, right? And not so much, if it was just me, I don't think it would be as compelling of a story.
And they have better relationships because they're not sent on a mission from you, the owner, and they've got some people they're trying to get money from. You probably could not find somebody with that kind of relationship who maybe is now doing their own thing already.
No, interesting. The president of Statim, he had his first kid, and she was in the NICU for a month, and we were running this business. And I tell you, that guy barely missed a beat. And I'm not sure, was that the best thing we all should have been doing? I don't know, but he was emotionally and personally invested in seeing this business succeed. I don't know if it would have mattered if I told him, don't pick up your phone, don't do anything. He's stuck in the hospital waiting for an update on his daughter, and he's working, he's like, I got nothing else to do. It takes my mind off it. And so I think it creates that unique quality in an individual who has ownership in a business. And yes, it does create unique challenges as well. But I think this is way more impactful to have somebody who lives and breathes it, cares about it, right?
Yeah, it sounds like you're able to take, let's say, the 5 of you, and you guys turn this into 10 of you with the positive of the relationship versus if you had employees, you might be paying for 5 and get the work done of about 3, or at least the commitment and so on.
Yeah, and it's so incestuous. It's like, train somebody for 2 years to have half a clue about the industry, the relationships, who do you connect with. It's just tough to break into a space unless they know you, right?
Yeah, and these people already have that.
Yeah, and so we're kind of scattered all over the country. So there's some, geography components to it as well. We have some people very strong in the Midwest and Southeast and Northwest and all those different caveats.
Yeah, and if you had employees doing that, before you know it, they might either be doing their own thing or what they have would look vastly different from what what your mission was back at home. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I came from the world where I had lots of employees, and it's got its set of challenges too. So, yes, so it's not. It's just different challenges, right? At the end of the day, yeah,
it's different. All right, so Craig, you and your partners find Statim Rx, and what drew me to having you on the show was it seemed that you had 4 or more major functions, I guess, or services. And it seems to me that you're not in a young industry, that the long-term cares, it seems like a lot of the nursing homes have stuff set up with long-term care pharmacies already. And it seems like there's some catch-as-catch-can stuff by some independent pharmacies, because a lot of times these long-term care pharmacies are not in the same town. So it seems to me that these services, are they kind of bridging a gap? Do these homes already have a care pharmacy and you're filling in somehow? What is Statim? What does it do?
The easiest sense is our relationships, again, with the institutional long-term care pharmacy, and they have a contract with the nursing home, maybe, 150 miles away.
These nursing homes already have a long-term care pharmacy. You're not partnering with the nursing home trying to come in and gain that business. You're connecting with the long-term care pharmacies.
Everything we do is pharmacy centric. So absolutely. And so we just provide a channel for them to get a stat med from an existing platform somewhere, right? And get that med filled and delivered to the client in the quickest way possible.
How would these places, if they didn't have someone like you, like Statim, what would these long-term care pharmacies be doing then? Would these things fall through the cracks, or would they try to go to some other pharmacy in town, or what hole are you filling then?
Well, so in the old days, there was just a lot more of those pharmacies, and they'd probably be just, kind of like my dad was, and they would just drive down and get the med filled and get it delivered themselves.
The long-term care would, and your dad would just treat them as a customer.
Exactly. And they were a customer, right? And so there was back in the day, there was a lot more of those long-term care pharmacies that serviced a smaller geography, right? And they would probably just handle it themselves. But also then, what happens, you get into the cost of having pharmacists on call, getting called in the middle of the night, all those types of things. And then you got that pharmacist driving down to the pharmacy to fill it and all these other things. When you're talking about probably, I don't know, a $10 drug, right? But you got to get that med to the patient because there's a time reason behind it.
Craig, but why wouldn't, boy, the devil's coming out a lot in this show, but why wouldn't your dad say, screw it, I'm not going to help Mrs. Smith at this house that the long-term care pharmacy is doing all of her business. Why should I come down after close and help out Mrs. Smith if I haven't seen her for 4 months because this long-term care pharmacy is doing it?
Well, for that example, he was the long-term care pharmacy.
He was the long-term care pharmacy.
He was everything. Like most of the community pharmacies, you probably have a lot of different lines that you service. He serviced a lot of different lines, and that was one of them. And so what we've been able to do is kind of take that was a problem there, take it out into a much global manner and give people the ability to get a med filled and get it taken care of and go from there.
Gotcha. Because we've got some long-term care pharmacies and they would pay us for it, but they'd say, hey, we're down in Ohio, a couple 100 miles away. Can you fill a 3-day prescription for this and this, company? And we would do it if the money was high enough, but it wasn't worth breaking our back for because this customer wasn't going to be our long-term customer. Yeah. So have you guys then created a network of other pharmacies, of independent pharmacies and so on that for a fee, will do this for the long-term care?
Yeah, it's a mix of independents, a mix of chains. It's, everybody has, if you got pharmacists standing around at 12 o'clock at night, it probably makes sense to run some prescriptions out the door. So everybody's got their own desire, whether or not it fits for them or not. But we've been able to, work on that across the country. And so then the other component that came out of that was the logistics side and saying, how do you get that med now from the pharmacy to the nursing home, right? Somebody's got to do that. But more importantly, how do you track it through the whole process to make sure nothing happens, right? And so we were sitting there scratching our head and we couldn't believe all the answers we'd get from people. Oh, we use taxis, we do stuff like that. I'm like, oh, how do you track that? How do you get a signature? I mean, goodness gracious, what if you get audited or they said they didn't get the med? How do you even know any of that stuff? And so we built and this has been the evolution of the company, is we built this whole, logistics portal to manage all that. So you can see when a delivery has been entered to be picked up, and you can see the driver's accept it. You can track them all the way to the retail pharmacy to pick up the med, and they take a picture of it and they drive it back to the nursing home. They get a signature from Nurse Smith, and it all gets funneled back to our portal. So they have a tremendous amount of confidence and the audit capabilities to go back and show you that that prescription has been fulfilled and delivered and taken care of. So, from that, Mike, is we've all of a sudden people started asking us, could we do more in terms of healthcare logistics, right? They're like, look, you have this whole network of drivers all over the country on demand, ready to go. What else could we be doing with that? So we started getting activity. Obviously, this whole COVID thing popped up, and we have health systems knocking on our door going, hey, we don't actually want people coming to the hospital to pick up their meds. Like, yeah, no, I get it. We can help you, and we can help do that fulfillment. And we can do it in one of two manners, right? We can do it on demand. So maybe you just weren't planning on it, and Mrs. Smith needs to get her med right away. And so you can just schedule up a driver and they'll come over and get it and deliver it. Or we can create sweeps for you. We can create routed systems that, you have these neighborhoods that you service every week, and we can have it set up so that the driver comes in, gets the meds, and goes and takes those 10 deliveries. And we've done that also in retail pharmacies as well, because as there's a million tech startups now, and they talk about being able to deliver meds next day and all this other stuff. Well, retail pharmacies already have the platform. They should be getting the med there same day. And this notion, because I grew up in the space, is you got to have the patient come into your pharmacy. Yeah, I get it. That would be ideal. It'd be ideal that you get some FaceTime with them. But that's not where we're at right now. I mean, people aren't even going into restaurants. So there's not a lot of desire to be in a building right now. And so we've been moving out into the retail space to say, hey, gosh, we can work with you. We can build out sweeps to help you retain these patients. We can build out on-demand solutions so that when your driver's already out and you missed a med, which happens all the time, or the refill came in late, you can just dial one up. And I know that, there's obviously a cost to that, but you're competing in a marketplace that's getting more and more competitive, right? Where, there's whole pharmacy systems that are built on same day delivery. And, there's, thousands of retail pharmacies out there that are already there that can do exactly the same thing. And so, we've been slowly expanding outside of the LTC market to, health systems in the retail space to say, look at these solutions. They're good for you as well. This is really the time to do it.
The example you gave before, the pharmacy delivery, the hospital sometimes has to get people medicine, or?
Yeah, that was really around, a lot of hospitals have outpatients programs, right?
Oh, gotcha.
Right now, They don't want patients coming on the campus. They got enough workload on campus. And so it was this notion of being able to take care of that patient, right? Keep the outpatient pharmacy running smoothly and not compromising it, but also keeping some continuity in that program around servicing that patient. Instead of just closing the door and telling them to go somewhere else, they can still service that patient and get them the meds in a safe manner, right? So that's part of what's come out of all this. So we do tens of thousands of deliveries a month now, and they're all HIPAA certified drivers. We have just a really slick portal that allows providers to dial up what they want to do. They can do multi-stops, single stops, on-demand sweeps. And it's something we're really excited about it, because there's nobody that really does it quite like we do and has the software technology behind it that we do and has the network of drivers that we do. And so, I always think back to my old days and thinking about retail pharmacies. And I used to be the guy that got the box of drugs at the end of the day. And then I'd go out and I'd get lost half the time. And I'd make the deliveries, and inevitably I'd come back and there'd be 3 more drugs that we missed, right? And so there was a cost to that. It wasn't much of a cost because it was me. I was the son, but there's a lot of pharmacies that employ somebody full time, and that's a better service. It looks better. They know the driver. That's all great. But, it could be a Saturday. That person could be sick. There's all these different things that could happen. Is being able to just tap into a portal of drivers to go get a med. They're HIPAA compliant. They're going to get it, and they're going to get it delivered. They may not, know the patient's name, but they're still getting the med to them, which is the most important piece. And so that's really where we're seeing the expansion of this business, right? Is being able to be there's lots of companies that do stuff like this, but most of them are also delivering, groceries, and they're delivering, restaurants, and we're focused on healthcare. That's where that's our bread and butter, and it's something we're pretty proud of.
Just like a pharmacist,
Mm-hmm.
on the first service you do of filling some of these prescriptions, just like they fill hundreds of other ones not related to you, are these drivers doing other driving things? I mean, they're not just Statim people, right?
No, they're not. They'll take on other jobs, right? Like they'll take on other opportunities as well.
It could be like an Uber driver, but who's, certified through you and so on.
Exactly. It could be, absolutely. And then there is a subsection, a pretty good subsection that just mostly focuses on healthcare and not much else. So it's a mixed bag. It depends on what you're looking for at the end of the day. If it's on demand and you're just deciding here in the next hour that you're going to schedule something up, it's probably going to be a jack of all trade drivers that would grab that med and get that. But that's just a one-off, right? That's just taking care of the patient, doing the right thing. We have other drivers that this all they do is healthcare all day long.
Yeah, if you're able to say, if a company wants you for a certain route or something, well, now you know that you can do, all right, 3 hours for this company, 3 for here and 3 for here. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a full-time driver that can basically be only healthcare then.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. And so we're nationwide. We're in 47 states. The only 3 we're really not in is we just haven't pushed it too hard, but we can pretty much go into most any market. Rural markets take a little bit longer, but I mean, for example, Oregon's pretty rural and there's nowhere that we don't deliver here. And that's just not a byproduct of that I live here. It's just, that's what we're capable of. Whether it's Oregon or Alabama or, Georgia, whatever it is, we can go into markets and cover them quite well.
If the price is right, I'm imagining you can find a driver almost any time. You might have to pay a higher rate or find someone or do this, but especially with Uber and Lyft and all those companies out there now, people know this. And if you communicate and get the price high enough, if needed, you're going to find someone to take your medicine.
Absolutely. And you're right. If it's 4 a.m. in the morning, it's a different price point. Right. If it's a scheduled delivery that you do every single week and it's usually done during the week, it's less than the 4 a.m. on demand, last second delivery. The reality of it is, though, in all these situations, in the environment we're in today, you're protecting the patient, you're protecting the healthcare workers, and honestly, we're providing jobs. People are looking to make some extra money, and so it works out. There's a lot of really good people that don't have careers right now. They don't have jobs, and so they're trying to make ends meet. And so it's been a nice kind of circle of value that's being added to the pharmaceutical supply chain in terms of getting the patients the right med at the right time.
Well, I know that our deliveries probably at least doubled during COVID.
Yeah, it's been a huge spike, and we've been really good about we're flexible, we're nimble. We know the space. We've got great logistics managers that know the ins and outs and how to make all this work and have relationships all over the country. And so we can step in a moment's notice. And we've done it in multiple cases, big hospital systems where we've been able to step in a week and solve their problem and make sure that those meds are being taken care of. So it's been pretty fulfilling from that standpoint, frankly.
The demand is there because of COVID, but the supply of drivers is there because people not working as much. And thankfully they're getting some work out of you guys.
They're making some side money for sure.
This is just a story that I think adds value to what you're saying, is that people will come in just, yesterday they said, I remember your dad, Mike, he'd, so there's a positive and negative to each story, right? So the positive is, I remember your dad, Mike, he came out at, 11:30 at night and brought me some Benadryl because my child had this or that. Oh, that's a positive. The negative? Well, my dad had to go out at 11:30 at night. I'd rather have someone else do it and say, well, maybe Mike wasn't there shivering at my doorstep, but somebody was there and got me the medicine that I needed.
Certainly helps with the quality of life, right? And employee retainment too. If it's not you, it's somebody else that's going and doing it in the middle of the night. And there's a lot of willing and able people out there looking to make a few bucks as well.
I imagine you always are thinking of other markets you could do. What else would you put under Statim versus not putting under Statim because you might confuse the customer?
The only other one that we've really put under there is the provider-focused PBM solution. And this was a byproduct of our pharmacies going, you guys have the expertise and the capabilities of doing this. Could you do it? Outside of that, I have to be careful with this one, is that I keep telling my partners we're not going to do anymore. And I keep telling my wife I'm not starting any more companies. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. That's my message, and I'm sticking to it for now. So we'll see.
Let's say the prescription delivery part becomes 90% of your business in Statim. Would you ever make that just Statim and then take everything else out and call it something else just to give a real clear vision of your top mover? Or would you bring 30 things under Statim that are all in the same pathway but not exactly delivery? You've seen people do it with, like, they've got this broad thing, but all of a sudden they call this something different because it's such a successful part of their business.
Right now, they're all synergistic, right? And so they all work really well together. So, but I would never say if it evolves and we're 90% logistics, maybe it looks different. That's for sure. Today, just kind of by nature, is we started really on the pharmacy side. We got into logistics because we didn't see a very good solution there. And now we're evolving into more. We're working with a number of our clients on the whole vaccine distribution and helping them, right? Which is very complicated and very timely in terms of the rollout in the senior care market, which is something we never would have guessed we were doing, but we're built for it. And we have the skills and the relationships to go make it work. And so, that's probably not a long-term part of our business. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's the right thing to do by the industry right now. And we do it, right? You just get it done. So, but it's still within kind of our core business. So it makes a lot of sense.
If they get vaccines from you, they might use the other things from you too.
Right.
The reason I ask is, like, our pharmacy is, I've got my pharmacy name, and then the tagline or the description is pharmacy and home medical equipment. And I've always wondered if I would be stronger in my market instead of calling it X pharmacy and then call it Y home medical equipment, because people can say, oh yeah, but there's a synergy. It's like, yeah, there is. But if I didn't have that synergy, if I just called it Y home medical equipment, would that be even a stronger focus? And would people know that we're damn serious about it instead of like combining the two things? So I just always wonder that, how far I'd go.
I think it's a great point. I would say our logistics business is a byproduct of our current business today, right? And so, but to your point, now that we have that stood up, is it better as it's on its own? I don't think we're there yet, but I'm always open to it. But I agree with your point. I mean, I know that the medical equipment side and the pharmacy side, and there's lots of companies that have been pharmacy and medical equipment, right? And you do wonder, because then you're competing against a big box chain for pharmacy, and you're also competing against those that do nothing but medical equipment, and they're bigger and they're out there. I think it really comes down to is just kind of like, are they synergistic? Probably not, but do you have somebody who's responsible for that line and they live and breathe it all day long?
Is this your final landing spot?
I want to continue to build these businesses and have them, be a lasting legacy for sure, and have a special story to tell about it. I don't see myself ever, no matter what happens down the road, I don't see myself ever kind of leaving the marketplace per se, the healthcare marketplace. I mean, I'm here to stay, and I may look at other ventures or other opportunities, but right now there's just a lot of work to do day in and day out on this thing right now. And we've got a lot of work, a lot of excitement. Yeah. And a long runway. I mean, we're just tapping the marketplace. So we've got a lot of stuff to still do and execute on. And, it's exciting. So I'll worry about those problems down the road.
Worry about growing too much later on.
Yeah.
That'd be a great problem to have. Well, Craig, pleasure meeting you.
Hey, real pleasure. I appreciate it. I love the back and forth. I think this was really good dialogue, and it's good. I love connecting with people in the space and your background and your history, and You probably hear some of the things I say, and it just makes you chuckle about, growing up in independent pharmacy. And now you live it and breathe it all the time, right?
Yeah, I live it. And people ask me if my kids will be. And I'm like, no, they won't.
I was just going to ask you.
No.
No, you don't think so?
One of my sons, he has a business degree and he's come back. And it's a good thing for him because he's my firstborn and he's young enough just to really get in the dirt of this. And then at any time he could just say, I'm going to do something else. He'll still be young enough, and so on. But none of the other ones have any interest. And that's just fine with me because if any of them happen to stumble onto pharmacy and love the science and love everything about it and did it knowing that there's a highly likely chance I won't be there, then that's fine. Because in the old days, you could look out 2 years down the road about the future of your business. Now you can look out about 2 minutes down the road. So
yeah, that's true.
So I'm pretty thankful that none of them are in it. We're third generation. It's been a good ride. And I bring up partners too, because my grandpa, my dad, and we've always basically ran the store as one benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
Heavy on the dictator and not so sure about the benevolency, but that's what I call it nonetheless. So
that's awesome.
Well, thanks, Craig.
Take care.
Bye-bye.